along with Catherine Okoro, who is Truman College financial coach here, a new program initiative that city colleges have launched to not only provide excellent educational opportunities, but to make sure that their students actually are prepared as they move into the world to make better financial decisions. In our roundtable discussion, we've got students, faculty, and staff here, and we're going to open up the floor for questions that are coming from students. So we'll go ahead. Someone has the microphone. Go ahead and give us your name and your question, please.
Hi, my name is Saima On. First of all, I want to share a little scary story from credit, and then I have a question.
Okay.
So a couple months ago, I got identity theft, which it's very important because when I sign it up, I put on digital one on my iPhone, which I can see what my transactions are and where I spend, how I spend it, so I can keep track of my money. But then one time I got charged $79 that I don't know where to spend, and then in my statement only say where it purchased, doesn't say what store, whatever, just say the state. So in my head I say, who gonna steal my credit? And then I call my bank, I say, this is scary because I wasn't there, and all these things. And they say, oh, you have to give me your information, blah blah blah. And I say, I can't remember what I gave you. And then the bank couldn't help me. And they said, in order for me to get my money back, I had to come in. But it's like a Sunday afternoon. And I say, how can I go to the bank? They're all closed. So, and then they asked me to go online and report it. It's so confusing, so I didn't. But I called someone in the same, the number they gave me. So I said, okay, why don't you put the report saying I called somebody stealing my card, to pause that, so at least I reported it, and then Monday I come in, to change my card and to do everything. So the point to the story is, it's easy to tell when somebody's stealing your card because in a card transaction doesn't really have any store name, time, and date. They just a random number. So that's where you know you've been stolen. And then the other question that I have is like, I just have a credit card sending to my mail, and the interest rate is free for now for 16 months. But after that, like, what other way that I can put my interest rate a little lower than 22.8%?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. So, you can always talk to your credit card company about, reducing the interest rate once you get it. But typically, you have to wait until the interest rate is actually active. So if you have a 0% credit card for, 18 months, it's going to be 0% for 18 months. It's better to have that conversation before your interest rate is going to increase. That also gives you negotiating power, because if your your interest rate is about to increase, and they see how great you are and they offered you this wonderful card in the first place, you have a better chance of maybe getting credit with another credit card company for 0% for additional time instead of paying that money. So having a strong credit history really gives you power. You can get 0% over here, 0% over there, and as long as you keep paying every month, your credit score is going to keep going up, and they are absolutely going to love you and keep offering you things. But as long as you have the behaviors necessary to maintain that credit and build it, the world is your oyster in terms of your credit growth. So good for you. Sounds like you're on the right track. Thank you for sharing. We have another question or comment?
Yeah. Hi. I'm Mark, a student at Truman College, and I had a few questions and a little bit of information. So let's say I have these loans from the bank for my personal life, and I have a low-end paying job, and of course I have to pay these loans back. If I file for bankruptcy, will that kind of save me? Like, will it save my credit score?
If you file so you have personal
more building loans, like house loans?
Oh, like on a mortgage?
Payment, yeah.
Okay. So that's different. So that loan is pretty significant, right? So if you have a mortgage loan or even a credit card or any other kind of loan, bankruptcy, it has dual-edged swords, right? So for the right situation and the situation that declares it, filing a bankruptcy could actually save you, right? But is it the best choice? Absolutely not. It is kind of like the get-out-of-jail-free card, so to speak, that people kind of refer to it as. But I'm not a fan of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is absolutely the last resort. there are a number of different types of bankruptcies. So there's a Chapter 13, there's Chapter 7, there's Chapter 11, and there's another chapter for farmers, which nobody in here would really care about unless you do. But particularly Chapter 13 and Chapter 7 are where people usually ask me about. And a Chapter 13 is a reorganization of debt. That typically means that your payments are all calculated, right? The bankruptcy trustee or bankruptcy attorney will put together and calculate actually what your payment will be based on your debt to income, and then give you a new restructured payment plan that you pay directly to the bankruptcy trustee, okay? A Chapter 7 is probably what you were asking about in particular, but that's the one where it's a complete liquidation of all your debt. That means that you don't pay anybody, okay? But the thing you guys all have to understand about bankruptcies, you have to qualify for them. So if it's just kind of let me go run up a bunch of debt and then file bankruptcy, that is absolutely not what you want to do. The bankruptcy laws changed a few years ago, and people actually have to qualify for bankruptcy. So if you're a person who makes enough money and can pay the debt, then the best thing for you to do is to get a budget, redo everything, stop spending like crazy, make some responsible decisions, and turn it around. The other thing is bankruptcies do stay on your credit report for a number of years, okay? A lot of years. Typically, a Chapter 7 stays on for 7 years, and a Chapter 7 stays on for 10 years. Now, what that means is it absolutely impacts your credit score, but what I can tell you is this. There are people who have filed bankruptcy who have beautiful credit, and the reason why is because they filed bankruptcy because they needed to and it made sense for them, but it wasn't because they ran up a bunch of debt and could pay it. So, bankruptcy can do a lot of things, and there's a lot of myths out there about bankruptcies, but, a bankruptcy is an option, but it's a last option and a last resort. It's not something that I recommend, not initially, okay?
Okay, and then let's say I'm getting into a marriage and my wife has debt. Do I have to pay off her debt when we get married?
Her debt.
Yeah, her debt.
Well, you should pay it off if you're a good guy. No, I'm just kidding.
Like if we have joint accounts, if we end up getting like in a joint account and I don't know, we separate or something.
So I am so glad you asked this question, because people automatically assume that when you're married to another person that you automatically have their debt. Well, that's actually not true, because there are different types of accounts. There's joint accounts, there's authorized user accounts, there's sole accounts that you can also have. Excuse me. And the difference being that, let's say I'm married and I have great, credit habits and my husband doesn't, for example, okay? Well, I may be the credit manager in our household, and my husband, I say, well, no, you're not going to get this because you're going to ruin our credit. We don't have to join anything, okay, even if we're married. The same thing applies for bankruptcy. If one spouse files bankruptcy, it does not affect the other spouse. That is the other thing, unless you have joint accounts. And a joint account means that you've applied for that credit with the other person. An authorized user account is an account where, for example, I'm a mom and I want to put my child on my credit card, or say you've spoken to your parents and you say, hey, I want you to put me on your card so I can start building credit history. They can make you an authorized user, which actually means that maybe you don't have any access to that credit card, but you get the benefits of them paying their bills every month to help you establish credit scores. Okay? And then you have the sole account holder, which is where you apply for it alone or by yourself. So now I'll tell you a true story about someone I was talking to recently who had a very similar situation with a husband and a spouse. And she's actually the more responsible party. Her husband is pretty much like, if I get money, I spend it. That's his attitude about it. And so she's in a very high position in a banking institution, and banks do pull your credit reports if you work for them. And she was concerned about her credit scores. And I looked at her credit report and said, you have 3 authorized user accounts that are all negative or delinquent. I said, you can have yourself removed for them, and those histories will completely disappear. She's like, really? Because she's just an authorized user. She is actually not responsible for those accounts. Her husband was not paying them. He was mismanaging them. So she was able to get them off her credit report, and her credit score is skyrocketed. Okay? So that's some things you have to understand when you talk about the different types of credit. There's sole, there's authorized user, and there's joint accounts. Okay? So the rabbit hole goes a little deep. Credit is a very deep and long conversation, and there's a lot of knowledge and information that I have that I can share with you to help you despite the question that you have. But it's a very serious thing. It's something that can be very impacting if you make the wrong decision. So thank you for your questions. Any more questions?
Like to share a bit of a story. Thought I knew what credit was really like, and I had been taking some economic courses and stuff. I graduated from Olive Harvey May of 2013, and at the same time I was very happy because I had gotten a divorce, I was raising a 13-year-old. And then the doctor said, Tommy, you have stage 3 breast cancer. So, here I am. I got a car. This was my gift to myself for my divorce. It was a little Honda Elantra, fully loaded. Skyrocketed interest rate, 29%. But I said, I deserve this vehicle. I gave this man all these years and whatnot, you know. I went back to school, finishing it. I was always one credit away from graduating to get a degree. So I said, I'm happy. I worked so hard. I was a letter carrier for the Postal Service. Well, at the end of it all, and I don't regret it any, my credit was poor. I had to fight to live and raise a kid. So most people would say it's over with. I'm done. Stage 3, 4, just let me die. And I said, no way. Not at all. I fought, I lived, I survived. Now today, a lot of times we get sidetracked because we look at what are we going to get immediately when we get something, not realizing the interest attached to it. I could have negotiated a better interest rate with the car dealership because guess what? They needed me for that vehicle. They needed me. That was the way in which they would get their money. So my thing is, before you actually get involved into what it is you do concerning the nature of credit, don't just look at the present of what that relationship you're establishing with credit will do. Think about the future.
Thank you for that. And they're rushing to the floor. I like this, with questions. All right. Ready? Yep. There we go.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Lawrence. My question is, what I really don't understand is, why is jobs checking our credit score? What happened to old interviews and resumes? I mean, why is that so important? I mean, if you do got a bad credit score, you might have a hard life. You might need this job to pay it off your credit score. So why are they judging us by that? I don't understand that. I really don't.
Well, Lawrence, I'm so glad you asked that question. I've often asked that same question. But one thing I'll tell you is this. Everybody understands that, things change. People lost their jobs. They were impacted by the market. Their credit may not have depicted the true picture like we talked about earlier, that photo gallery. It may not show exactly who you are. Credit reports actually say a lot about you. If you have integrity, are you responsible? Are you reliable? Are you trustworthy? For example, I never understood when I first went into the banking industry actually why a loan officer didn't have to be licensed, because you're around so much private and personal information about people. And unfortunately, those things weren't a part of the process. Well, now it's like, double over, everything's due diligence, which I think is really great, especially for all of us, especially those of us who've been victims of identity theft as well. You just want everything to be extra careful, and you want to make sure that as an employer, when you hire people, that you use every possible tool to make sure that you're hiring somebody that's not going to steal all the employees' information, or that's going to have access maybe to registration or information that they can leak out. You want that kind of person, so you do your due diligence. But what I can tell you, because I do know people who have had interviews and who have not had great credit and have also gotten the job. And the difference between that person and the other person is that person was upfront about it. That person didn't act surprised when the employer said, yeah, what's up with this? You want to get in front of it. And that really is the difference, is that if you go in and you admit it and you say, I've read everything, I realize that pulling my credit report is a part of the employment process, what I'd like to share with you is this. And then I would go into, I lost my job in 2002. On my credit report, you're going to see between 2002 and 2005, I was missing a lot of payments. I was out of work, but I started working again in 2006, and I paid everything. I caught up everything, and you can see that. You can see that I rebuilt my credit. Now, that's a person I would hire, because that person says, you know what, when things got tough, I didn't file bankruptcy, right? I handled my business when I got a job, and I'm being upfront about it because this is what happened to me. So that actually says even more than just having great credit, because there are very few people, even in the many years that I was in banking, where